Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Pierre, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Fargo Season 4, Episode 2. It's called The Land of Talking and Killing. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. Everything kind of picks up, more or less where it left off, although the weird ending from Episode 1 didn't necessarily get addressed in and of itself.
No.
Although certainly, it kind of hints towards Mayflower, the nurse, like her, I guess, interest / obsession with Ethel.
I think obsession's a little bit strong right now. I think, maybe later, but for now, I'd stick with interest.
I'd say it was. I would say it's too strong as well if it wasn't for that creepy last shot from the last episode where she's just sort of standing at the window talking.
That's true.
That felt creepy. And it felt like it was directed in the same sort of direction. Obviously, it's literally looking at Ethel's house, but
yeah.
So. Yeah, this episode I thought was not bad. I do think that it maybe lacks a little bit of focus. It's what, because last episode I remember saying quite specifically that the opening 15, 20-minute section was the best part of the episode. It was very focused, very stylized. Everything was kind of working towards establishing two key things in the episode. And then you had the back 2/3 that were kind of just more cutting around a bunch of things. This episode was just all that. It was just all of cutting around different things. And there was obviously some important things that were introduced. I do wonder if it would have benefited from being a little more focused and having like more advancements in like two plot lines instead of having a little bit of all plot lines.
Yeah. I also think maybe the episodes are a little bit too long. This is like, it's almost a full hour. I think it's like 58 minutes, something like that. I do think maybe, we're just kind of going around a little bit much. Maybe, this could probably be 10 minutes shorter.
Yeah, because it got to a point about halfway through the episode, or further than that even, where it reminded me of the two women who broke out of the prison at the start, and I went, oh yeah, that was this episode. Like, I actually had forgotten about it by the time they popped back up again.
Because we did so much else. And I think I didn't really feel the length last episode, because, half of the episode almost was dedicated to that opening section. So the back half of it didn't have enough time for me to feel like it was jumping around too much and going on too long, whereas this time, with it just being a standard episode, so to speak, I did feel it a bit.
Yeah. No, I agree. I felt the length a little bit in this one too, and I think it is down to like focus, because it was jumping around so many plots. I tend to feel the length more in those types of episodes than I do when it's just one focus with a beginning, middle, and end.
I don't remember, and maybe you will. Has this show always been like the episodes like a full hour? Is that a more recent development? More
or less. Maybe it was a little bit short, but they were always...
No, that's fair enough. It's been years at this point since even the last season, let alone season 2 or 1.
Yeah, there was a lot of comments reminding us that Meek Milligan, his name, because I'll say this right now, I could not have told you a single character's name from season 2. So there weren't. No. So when the name Milligan popped up in the first episode, I never even set off on a single alarm bell.
I did reference him and talked about how he was from the Kansas mobs.
Yes.
But I obviously didn't clock the name itself.
Yeah, Milligan specifically here is the Irish guy who, as we find out in this episode, is the one who's mainly in charge of looking after the kid, who presumably is going to be, grow up to be said Mike Milligan.
Just about, yeah. Yeah, I think the ages just about line up.
Yeah, it's about 20 or so years later. That'd put him in his hitting 30-ish. So, yeah, that sounds about right. So... yeah, as far as obviously the big developments in this episode, we have obviously the main character in the family we kind of follow now. Now that the Don is dead, is Josto, played by Justin Schwartzman, and his brother, who lives in Italy, shows up and is very different. Doesn't have a complete grasp of English. He speaks some English, but obviously there's a lot of stuff that's been translated for him. But he has a very different attitude. He thinks the Americans are all soft, and by Americans I mean all the American Italians. He thinks they're all soft and they should show their strength more. It's all about killing and showing your strength and blah blah. And he's kind of presented as this being tougher, and he's physically bigger. He's a big guy, likes his meatballs, I guess. But he has that big imposing figure, and a lot of this is him kind of getting into the mix of things, challenging his brother. I mean, there's literally a scene towards the end where they're having dinner and he's taking the seat, the head of the table. And Schwartzman's just kind of standing over his shoulder like, shift.
Not too happy with it, is he?
No. And we see him, confront a couple of characters, including Cannon, Chris Rock's character, when there's like a meeting where they get to see their kids again for just a quick conversation.
Check in. How you doing?
Just making sure they're not being starved or anything like that. And this stuff was solid. I mean, mainly the thing that I thought was the best of this stuff was really when it came down to the Slaughterhouse kind of standoff, right?
I'm shocked.
Why are you shocked?
I'm shocked that you thought this was the best bit. It was probably the standout point of the episode that had some style to it. Yeah,
well, that's the thing. Like, when I say that, I'm not trying to even be that complimentary, because I do think it's an issue that it was the only time in the episode I felt kind of like any kind of feeling for what was going on in the episode.
Yeah, I think this is... it's not a bad episode. I don't really dislike much in it. There's just not a lot of excitement either, is there?
Well, it goes back to what I was saying about it bouncing around. I never really felt that any one plot got to have anything super meaty to it. Whereas this was the one thing where they'd set up this brother enough, and they'd set up the idea that the Cannon's group were going to take over this slaughterhouse, and they're going to claim that it was something that they'd made a deal with the Don before he died, and see how they reacted, see if they were weak, see if they were going to cave. And the brother character, he's not actually supposed to be here for much longer. He's only supposed to be here for a few days for the funeral and whatever, but you kind of get the impression that these types of incidents are going to convince him that he should stay around and show the family how it's done. Like he's...
Yeah, definitely.
With his collection of teeth that he's got and his little tin that he shows.
Yeah, that was a lovely story.
This is the scene where they really stand off against each other, some tension, and it kind of continues the brothers thing where he's talking about how, Americans talk too much and all this, understanding, it's just why you're all too soft, and really kind of says, look, well, if this was a deal, about you leave and I'll talk to my brother and see if there was anything, and if this is all on the up and up, then you can come back and that'll be the end of it. And you get the impression from, because this is a Dr. Senator here.
The one name before this you went, I remember that one, no problem.
I did remember it, no problem. What are you talking about?
Just felt like you paused there.
I paused before, like, a lot of names. But Dr. Senator is here, and you get the feeling that I don't think he's even that pissed about the outcome of this, because the whole point was to gauge how they were going to react. So this is still successful in the sense that it gives him
really
a lead.
Lost.
Yeah. So
it's like, okay, we'll come back. You'll be fine. This went relatively smoothly, right? On their side of things.
Yeah, they do axe one person in the hand when they first came in and take over, and it's just delightful in its absurdity. It's one of these things where we're used to this Fargo tone by now, so not everything it does is that unique anymore. Even down to like Mayflower being kind of the character she is, it feels like, okay, we've had Fargo characters like this before. She's almost like, I guess the closest comparison is maybe how Kirsten Dunst's character was back in season 2.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
Kind of. Obviously, she's different, because we find out she tries to kill someone else in this episode, and it turns out she's kind of like, she sees herself as an angel of death. It's not that she had like an agenda against the Dawn specifically. It was more just what she does.
Might be less interesting to me.
Well, it's what's funny, because at the end of the episode, because she talks to Ethel a little bit about taking her under her wing and offers her an after-school job, which Ethel's not particularly enthusiastic about. It's like, hey, come over and clean my house for me. And she's like, and she's naturally a little bit offended. Like, why are you just randomly offering me, the one black kid to come and clean your house? What the hell? And she's kind of quirky and weird about it, but she says, I'm going to bake you a pie. Everyone likes pie. And she comes over with this pie, and when we see the guys get out the cars at the end of the episode coming towards the house, but before I recognized the cop from earlier, for a second I was thinking, was this pie a signal? Was she like signaling people with this pie? Was this like marking the house, like, hey, now's your time to make the hit, kind of thing?
It's a bizarre signal.
And I don't think it was, obviously, because once I saw the cop, because the cop earlier on says we're going to frame someone for this. Also, there's 2 escaped convicts living in the house, so either one of those reasons or why there's a group of men with guns coming towards the house. They're both valid reasons.
Could be they're there for the convicts, and then it's like, well, now this works nicely for the other reason too.
Yeah, because one of the convicts, of course, is Ethel's auntie. That's why they come here. And that was maybe one of the weird things for me, is that the start of this episode, the opening 5 or so minutes, is them escaping, their first interactions, getting the clothes when they come out. A little bit of humour to it. Not super funny, but it's alright. And then they come to the house and we get their first interactions with Ethel's mother, and Ethel's mother feeling kind of uncomfortable with them openly talking about robbing banks in front of her daughter. It's like, hey, I don't want you to encourage her. This, she's a good girl. Don't encourage this line of thinking.
Yeah. It was a bit weird as well, though, because when they said it, it was clearly intended as or it plays as a joke, at least to Ethel, right? Whether or not they mean it or not is a different question, but, it comes across as just what are you going to do? Oh, we're going to rob a bank. It comes across a bit of, just a bit of an offhand comment rather than, oh, we're actually going to go rob a bank. So I think maybe Emma overreacts a little bit.
I don't know. I feel like, even if they are joking, the fact that Ethel's mother thinks they might be serious maybe tells you everything you need to know about what, okay, maybe she might not want to rob a bank now, but she believes she could.
Sure,
she believes she would do it. But anyway, the point I was trying to make is that we spend all this time at the start, this is the first 10 minutes, and I joked earlier that when we came back and we saw them later briefly, much later in the episode, I had forgotten that's how the episode started. It does feel weird to me that we spend so long in those first 10 minutes establishing these two characters, and then the rest of the episode doesn't really do anything with them.
No, it just kind of forgets all about them.
Which is where the episode feels kind of weird from a structural point of view, because most of the plots I think are fine in terms of what they do. The attempted assassination on the head doctor at the one who turned him away last episode, and then Josto kind of trying to accept that they can't just try and kill him again. It's too suspicious now. He has to kind of hold off for a bit, let him get comfortable and think he's safe, and then later on maybe go after him.
Yeah,
kind of thing. These scenes were fine, and I enjoy what it's doing. It's set up that he's marrying some guy's daughter and the guy's willing to have his daughter married off to the mob because he wants election points and support,
something or other. Yeah.
Influence
that only the mob can bring.
And there's some tension there. He specifically makes a crack at the end about how he's going to have a lot of sex with his daughter just to make him feel uncomfortable. He's kind of petty, and to be fair, Josto as a character has come across as someone up until now who is determined to prove that he is the head honcho. He's determined to prove that he is worthy of being the Don of the family, and it kind of feels like he's out of his depth the whole time a little bit.
Yeah, because I say you got that scene when the cop comes in. It's like, hey, you can't just go and whack this guy right now, and he has to kind of he's so enthusiastic with gusto of just, no, we got to do this now. We got to make a point, and it feels it's less about a point of family revenge and more him showing he's capable and he has to be talked down from it. It's like, hey, it's fine, we can do it later, it'll still work, it'll still everyone will get the comeuppance.
Yeah, that's it though. He's specifically really personally offended by this guy. He's actually a lot more level-headed looking once you put him next to his brother, whose first instinct for everything is let's kill everyone and make a show of our strength.
In comparison, yes, I agree.
Yeah. He comes across as, okay, he's bloodthirsty for this one guy, but ultimately he at least doesn't have the instinct to just want to turn it into a bloodbath, in every situation. That's just not who he is.
But if it's personal, I feel like he's being extra, vindictive here to make the point.
So I mean, we get a good establishing of these characters more than anything. Mayflower, of course, gets fired from her job, as you would expect, given the attempted murder of another patient. In fact, I was questioning at the start of this scene, I'm like, she's just being fired? You basically know she's probably killed other people, and you caught her try to kill someone else. Maybe the police should get involved. But it kind of, by the end of the scene, it makes a little bit more sense, because she talks him into more severance, because he doesn't really want the hospital to be investigated, and he thinks that this will look bad for them, that they've allowed this to happen. So, okay, I get it. He's got a reason to not want to make it public. He's got a reason to keep it as quiet as possible. I get it.
Still seems a little bit easy, though, doesn't it?
It is a bit. I mean, I enjoyed her kind of overly talking her way out of it. She just keeps talking. She's a motor mouth, and it's that type of character. It's that Kristen Dunst character from from season 2, essentially. That style of Minnesota, never shuts up character.
Yeah, I think it's notable that it is the Minnesotan character that is like that. Just to make it clear that this is still Fargo, essentially.
Yeah. So I'm not down in the episode. I do definitely think it's more I don't know, just like okay versus last episode.
Yeah, it's as I say, it's not a bad episode. It doesn't do much wrong in individual scenes. There's nothing that I really point at and go, oh, I didn't like this scene, I didn't like that moment. Nothing's as bad as like the fart joke from the first episode.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, there was nothing like that I actively went, ugh, I don't like that.
Yeah, there was nothing like that. But at the same time, it didn't have much energy. It didn't feel like it had much momentum. Just excitement in general. You had like the Slaughterhouse scene was pretty good. I like some of the individual scenes, that we've just discussed, but nothing that brings any energy to the episode as a whole. Individual moments, sure, but it's a little bit lackluster, isn't it?
It's hard to engage with it. In its current form, and maybe this is something that'll clear up over time. I mean, you have characters like Ethel who are, more likable than a lot of the other characters, and we get a bit more of her in this episode. We find out she speaks French because, like, Mayflower kind of speaks some French in front of her, and she kind of, like, wows her by, like, just answering her back because she knows what she's saying. And, like, there's those little character details that are kind of sprinkled throughout that do make the characters feel a bit more fleshed out and do make them feel like there's a bit more here. It's something as simple as the Irish guy sort of promising to look after the son. And given that we know that he kind of has his name, presumably, assuming this is the same character, like, we know that, okay, clearly he doesn't actually end up going back with his father. So his father's promise to take him back at some point is actually an empty promise, even if he believes it, obviously, as he's saying it. But we suspect
something's probably going to go wrong.
Yeah,
I mean, that describes 90% of the events in this show. Something will probably go wrong.
Well, as the opening text always says, that this is a true story. At the request of the survivors, some of the names have been changed, but out of the respect of the dead, the rest has been told exactly as it happened, which is a complete lie, every single word of it. But
it's the point of it. Always tells you there's going to be a lot of dead bodies by the end.
Yes, and that's always been true.
That's to be expected.
Yeah, that's always been true. By the end of every season of this show, there's been a lot of dead characters. But, yeah, it's just. This is a really hard type of episode to review because
it's kind of run of the mill.
Yeah, and it's this weird thing where Fargo as a show like felt so unique when it launched, and season 2 is kind of as we've said many times, is the peak of the show for us. And not only did season 3 kind of diminish the enthusiasm a little bit, although I think there's nothing wrong with this season yet. It also has the problem of like there've been so much other good TV that's kind of spawned in the last few years in its wake.
To be fair,
in its absence as well, I should just point out as well, like it was gone for a long time.
It was, and I would say, to be fair to it, nothing's maybe got the exact same tone as Fargo that I can think of off the top of my head.
Oh, that's true.
That is still unique, but at the same time, since season 1 and 2, there's a lot more quirk in TV. That we can see now. There's a lot more variety in tone and style that's not just, the handful of things that we used to expect. When this came out, it was like so fresh and it was like nothing else. Now, while nothing's exactly like this, there are other things that are close.
Yeah, keep in mind, season 1 of Fargo was 2014, which is actually a year before even Mr. Robot. So the idea of like that, that kind of stylized TV was so fresh at the time. Yeah,
I mean, hell, even something like Better Call Saul tonally isn't a million miles away from this, with just just being a bit weird at times, just a bit off kilter, but still having a dramatic point. And obviously, I think that show is so much better than this. Don't get me wrong, but my point is just the lack of uniqueness. Even though it's not identical, there's just enough things filling that void in the area.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. I can kind of see what you're saying about Saul, although I do think there's some major differences, though, in terms of... with Saul, you get the impression that the characters and their stories are important, whereas I feel like in Fargo, obviously they're there to serve the point of the purpose of the season, but because we're not going to continue these characters past the season, with some minor exceptions, really they're more about serving what the idea of the season is, as opposed to...
Absolutely. Yeah. I wasn't really talking about the narrative structure or the way they use its characters, just more in the just off-kilter tone, just not quite playing it straight. Like, Saul, in years gone by, you can see it played as a kind of standard crime drama, like a gritty crime drama, but it plays it with that element of humor. And I think Fargo does a similar thing where, sure, it's you could play this as a really straight crime drama, but it plays it with that element of quirk. That's kind of what made me think of the comparison, I think.
Yeah, other details. I mean, they confirmed that Ethel's parents do owe money to the mob.
Yep.
Cannon's mob specifically, obviously. There's 10% interest for the first month, and it goes up after that. So
that's a lot of interest.
Yeah, they might be in deep doo-doo before long.
Maybe they should rob a bank.
Maybe they could pay them back. Yeah.
Maybe they should rob his bank.
Get one of his credit cards. Just send the money on a loop through the same system. That's what banking works.
I'm sure that there's nothing in place to stop that happening.
Oh dear. Actually, honestly, like it's barely mentioned in this episode. There's that one conversation between Cannon and, because there's not a lot of Chris Rock in this episode. Bizarrely, he's only in like 2 scenes. But he's in that scene with Doctor, where they talk about the credit card, and they're talking about how they need to get all the white businesses and like neighborhoods and systems all involved with this idea to make it work. And so that idea of trying to like get them to take up this idea, from a black group of characters in this time period when they can't even go to these places for service, is kind of a fascinating thing to talk about, and it's only just briefly mentioned. There's a good metaphor with the lions in this scene as well. There was a decent little speech about because they're talking about the brother who's appeared, and they'll say, oh well, he's the lion who's been in the jungle, whereas the one we've been dealing with is the lion who's been in a cage his whole life. And Doctor points out that lions aren't in jungles, that's tigers, and Karen's like, shut up.
That is the appropriate response to that, I think.
Fine, he's been on the plains. The point is, he's out in the wild. He's out in the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
Oh dear. So no, I mean, all the things that make it Fargo are there. Like, there's no denying that. I do hope I get a bit more engaged with it though. I hope, like, episode 3 or 4 or whatever draws me in a touch more.
Me too. I'm hoping it's just a case of, it's just a bit of a slow start. They're wanting to introduce too many elements, maybe for its own good, and then once those elements are kind of all running, we can have a bit more fun with them. Maybe.
I am wondering if I end up feeling very similar to season 3, and I'll be generally be okay with it, and I'll watch it, and maybe it'll have that 1 or 2 standout episodes like season 3 did, but otherwise I won't be that in love with it. Because I think the thing that stands out for me with season 2 is that almost every plotline was like popping in that season.
Every episode as well. I mean, I couldn't tell you them all right now because obviously it's been years, but when we were watching them, every episode had something. Even if it wasn't, something from every plot, it had something that stood out above and beyond.
Because you had Plemons and Dunst like trying to hide that dead body they ran into. That was a great plot line. You had the alien stuff. Mike Milligan stuff was great. All the action that came out of that was really good. In fact, that's one actually minor point I want to give to last episode. I remember very distinctly, there was a scene in season 2 of Fargo where he has this, it was a top-down shot scene where he sort of like disarmed a bunch of people and shot them.
It was so, do you know what? I can still vividly picture it, and that is quite something.
That's how good that scene was. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is that if you remember the way the Irish killed the first mob in last episode, the shot was top-down. I talked about it, how it was like a top-down shot. And I'm just thinking about it now, and I'm connecting it to the idea that he learns his craft from an Irishman is a really interesting little thematic link there.
Visual parallel.
Yeah, obviously it's not as stylish because they're not as like because in his scene he was like doing like reversals and spins and also.
It was impressive. Like I say, I can still remember it. It's still probably one of the standout moments from that season. Yeah.
So hey, I don't mean to be too down on this because it was fine. It was perfectly fine. We'll keep watching.
It just sounds like we're down on it because we don't have a lot of things to really dig into or praise. There's little bits here or there. There's not enough meat to really get invested into, is there?
Yeah, it's not inspired. It's not sparked my passion yet, I suppose is the best way of putting it. But it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine TV. So there you go. That's episode 2 of season 4. We'll be back with episode 3, of course, next week. Obviously not a week from now. Earlier, this was the second episode that aired the same night as the first episode, so we're just a little bit later in the week with this one. So let us know what you thought of the episode in the comments. Please do like and subscribe. Liking is super important on the YouTube. Annihilate that like button. as we started.
Annihilate. Is that what we're going with now?
Well, I keep threatening to start using the word smash, and I think it was on the Ace. Me and Tara said annihilate, and that seems to be the going word now.
I feel like you should try and come up with a different word every time on the spot and see how long until you just crash and burn.
Annihilate, obliterate, disintegrate.
Don't waste them all now.
It's a bit of a cheat because the word's still there, but I like the idea of going Hulk smash that like button.
I'll give you like half a pass on that one.
But yeah, obviously that's the nice and free way to support us, but you can of course support us over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses and help keep all the content coming, and get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. But otherwise that is us, so thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?